What do you think of when you think of the word control? Maybe you think of your boss at work. Maybe it is a certain friend or family member. Or maybe you think of a movie about mind controlling. Isn't it interesting that we never think of ourselves on the side of controlling? It's always as a bystander or being controlled by someone else. It's also interesting that we associate the word control with evil, while a lot of the time the person quote unquote controlling us is just attempting to help us. Also, what happens if something is uncontrollable? Well, two artists from two different decades and countries painted two different paintings related to this idea of what happens if you try to control the uncontrollable. The first painting we're taking a look at is The Race of the Riderless Horses by Theodore Géricault. Today it can be viewed in the Getty Museum in LA, but was painted back in 1817. Theodore Géricault's full name is actually Jean-Louis André Theodore Géricault. He was born September 26th in 1824 in Rouen, France. When he was a student, he learned the traditions of English sporting art from the French painter Carl Vernet, and he learned a remarkable facility for capturing animal movement, according to Britannica. He did have a few successful paintings other than The Race of the Riderless Horses before dying January 26, 1824 at the age of 32. The first thing we see in The Race of the Riderless Horses is the guy holding the giant horseback in the center of the painting. The lighting is pretty much like a spotlight. He is perfectly lit up while everything around him is dark. We are able to easily follow the lines of the guy's leg to the chaos in front and the lines of the horse's neck to see what is going on behind him. Additionally, the choice of color is interesting as it matches the background of the dirt. So although it is important that we see him, who he is not an important part of the painting. The important part of the painting is actually what is happening. These men are attempting to control an animal that is much bigger and stronger than they are. In other words, they are attempting to control a part of nature that is uncontrollable. If we take a deeper look into the painting, we see not only is there destruction behind them in the form of the dust cloud, but there's also destruction in front of them. There is a man on the bottom right about to get run over by the whole stampede of men attempting to control their horses. Géricault is making a statement about nature versus man. Géricault is telling us that through this painting that destruction comes from attempting to control something that is uncontrollable. The second painting we're looking at is A Walk at Dusk by Caspar David Friedrich. This painting can be viewed in the Getty today, but was painted from 1830 to 1835. Friedrich was born in Greifswald, Swedish Pomerania, on September 5, 1774. At the age of 7, Friedrich's mother died. At the age of 13, his brother died as well. A few years later, in 1782, his sister died, and his other sister died in 1791. All these tragic events are likely why Friedrich has such a sad theme in the majority of his paintings. Today he is not known for his sad themes, but known for his later allegorical landscapes, which feature contemplative figures silhouetted against night skies, morning mists, barren trees, and Gothic ruins. Looking at his painting, A Walk at Dusk, the first object our eyes are attracted to is the big rock in the center. Looking deeper below the rock, you will notice some flowers laying against the rock, as if this rock formation in the middle of nowhere is a grave. While not seeing the man right away, he is easily spotted after following the lines from the rock down to the man. The man seems to be melancholy, whilst standing and bowing his head near the grave. The dull colors throughout the entire painting mixed with the man standing in the darker part of the painting, the ground. We assume this man is contemplating death. In fact, the only bright color in the painting is red, which most of the time represents evil, or in this case death. Looking at his surroundings, all the trees and grass are all dead because of how yellow and brown and fairly dark they are. In this narrative of what human control leads to, Friedrich is making a statement on what the result of attempting to control the uncontrollable is going to look like. This result is in terms of the physical world around us, mentally and emotionally. In order to get to the point where you are seriously contemplating death mentally and emotionally, parts of your brain have to metaphorically die. So quite literally, the man's surroundings in A Walk at Dusk represents how he was doing mentally and emotionally destroyed. Furthermore, Géricault's The Race of the Riderless Horses shows us that the destruction comes from attempting to control the uncontrollable. Therefore, together these two paintings are telling us where destruction comes from, what it looks like in the world around us, and what it feels like mentally and emotionally. Fast forwarding to today, it is pretty easy to just look at these paintings and think that as the idea of destruction comes from trying to control an uncontrollable situation, and it does not apply to us. Well, not to get too controversial or anything, but I have two recent events that apply to this conversation: the pandemic and drug addiction. First of all, the pandemic. If somehow you're not aware, in the year 2020, there was a worldwide virus that spread like wildfire known as COVID-19. It still impacts many people today. It was one of the more deadly viruses in recent history, and for nearly a whole year, everyone stayed at home while scientists searched and eventually found and came up with a vaccination for it. There were studies published that the hospitalization rates, or the amount of people going to the hospital as a result of COVID-19, among 12 to 34-year-old individuals are 4.1 times higher in the unvaccinated population, according to the CDC. Despite all the evidence pointing towards the vaccine being safe and effective, people chose not to get it. Unfortunately, the unvaccinated people today are like the men in the race of the riderless horses, in the sense that the men were trying to control an animal that is much bigger than they are, which results in the horses controlling where they run and how fast they run, while the horse of this metaphor is COVID-19. Whether or not the men are scared of the horses or the unvaccinated are scared of COVID-19, they both try to control something they just can't, which results in the destruction through some getting injured and some even dying. The other situation of today that relates to this idea is drug addiction. Growing up, we learn that drugs are bad and to stay away. Despite this, since the year 2000, the rate of deaths from drug overdoses has increased 137%. Every scenario that has to do with drug addiction always metaphorically ends with a painting like a walk at dusk. Firstly, drugs kill small parts of your brain in a slow manner. So in every situation of drug addiction, the dead scenery of A Walk at Dusk is a visual representation of how your brain is when on drugs. Drugs can also kill people too. If someone overdoses and then their close friends and family are now mourning a death, which results in friends and family's emotional state similar to the man in red. Alternatively, someone could be driving a friend while high, get into an accident, and kill the passenger. This results in the drug user's brain and an emotional state to be like the surroundings and the man in red. In the end, Friedrich and Jericho may have just been artists from 200 years ago, but their theme of destruction comes from trying to control the uncontrollable has always been around. The only question for those who attempt is if they'll end up like the man with the horse or the man in red.